Sometimes running it like that, it may not feel as good as a human being. And what feels good as a human being can be anti-productive. And it's actually opposite of each other. What at times can feel a little more cold or meritocracy is actually more humane and better for people, and people rally to it more. But initially, it doesn't feel that way. Bad news early is good news. Good news early is obviously good news. But the fact that you're moving with intention and transparency and speed and clarity, human beings, you've got to treat them like that. You've got to get out of this dynamic of, well, this subset I'll treat this way and this subset I'll treat that way. It's more of the directness and the transparency. People rally to it because you buy a sense of trust and confidence in them, that you trust them and they trust you now because you're going to tell them the truth even when it's not good news.
Welcome back to The Revenue Dilemma. This show is about unlocking growth and challenging the status quo to uncover the real strategies and tactics that shape company transformations and breakthroughs. Today's episode dives into what separates good companies from great ones and why operational excellence, meritocracy, and clarity of strategy are still the ultimate levers for long-term value creation. My guest today is Sam Monti, CFO of WP Engine and one of the most respected operators in the software technology world. Sam's career spans public and private equity environments, including leadership roles at Epicor as CFO, Chorus, and Mitratech, where he helped deliver one of the highest cash-on-cash returns in the private equity firm's history. And he's also worked across turnarounds, growth transformations, buy and build, and he's known for pairing financial precision with strategic clarity. Sam and I first connected on a call that was supposed to be 30 minutes, and it went well over an hour. It was clear immediately why people talk about his leadership with such respect. My favorite part of the episode is where he describes the height of sophistication and simplicity and how he uses the rule of three to cut through the noise, align an entire organization, and turn complexity into momentum. It's a masterclass in clarity from someone who has led through every market cycle. In this conversation, we'll cover how to create company-wide clarity through simple, repeatable rules that everyone can rally around, why operational discipline and effective capital deployment are the real differentiators of elite performing companies, the story behind Epicor's SaaS transformation and how a clear NRR target turned into a cultural and financial rallying cry, and what most leaders get wrong about meritocracy and how to build cultures that reward performance without losing humanity. One of my favorite parts is the revenue algorithm that Sam built to identify where to invest next across NRR, bookings, and other revenue, and how he uses it to find money left on the table. So let's jump in. Here's my conversation with Sam Monti. Sam, welcome to the Revenue Dilemma podcast.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah. Well, I've heard so much about you over the years, and your reputation definitely precedes you. And then finally had a chance to connect with you live for about an hour call. I think we were scheduled for 30 minutes and it went an hour. And just hearing your breadth of perspective, insight, I just knew we had to make this conversation happen. So I appreciate you doing that.
No, it's outstanding. And yeah, I've never not been accused of not enjoying to talk. So I'm not surprised it went an hour. That's my 30 minutes.
Okay, good. Well, I'll take it. I'll take every minute I can get. But as I was doing some of the prep for this, I just started to see the breadth and depth of obviously the ground you've covered in your career. And I started to make note of the different, what I would call leadership archetypes in roles that you've played in all the organizations you've been a part of. And I'm talking about turnaround CEO, transformation CFO, integrator, COO, buy and build, scale CFO, growth stage revenue leader, or growth stage executive leader. When you think about that kind of ground that you've covered, I'd love to hear a little bit about which role you love to play the most, and how you decide going into a situation what's required and what hat you put on going in.
Yeah, that's it. It makes me look back. I think I've been fortunate in my career. Some of the fortune honestly created because I raised my hand at the right times. I never formulaically had a plan. If I do this, I'll be this C-suite by the time I'm X age. I just happened to go to roles that interested me. I raised my hand for some really difficult roles my first 20 years in two public companies. So when I first went into private equity, it just happened to be that, I had the opportunity with Vista Equity Partners, and it was a early stage company. Had been actually around for 25 years, but the investment thesis was talented C-suite. We're going to put in operational practices. We're going to grow this to what it can be, both organically and inorganically. So I think that was like my first shot within private equity. I think what I enjoy the most is, to be honest with you, the difference between poor companies and okay companies and great companies really goes down to the sausage making. I've I've got a real bias now in my life that operational efficiency, operational excellence, that is what determines the great from the good. Um, but at this stage of my career, do I want to be ground down and putting in best operational practices? No. My bias is I've found the last 10 years, I love being the strategic leader within a company. I love being that's the journey that we've stabilized the operational efficiency. Now we're really focusing on how do you effectively deploy the capital? What is the strategy? Like, how do you spurn to growth if you need that? How do you do the product rationalization? How do you get the fellow executives and skip level 1 and 2 focused on very clear ideas? And I think you do that from, I've fallen in love with a quote that I heard about 5 years ago. The height of sophistication is simplicity. And it was quoted by a really famous female playwright in the early 1900s America. And she was really quoting Leonardo da Vinci's view on nature and that man can learn from nature's sophistication through the simplicity of nature. And the reason I think it's a powerful is if you can really distill or bifurcate strategies to very clear rally cries and never exceed the rule of three, you can really motivate organizations because when you clearly define what success is and what it looks like, people will run to it. And again, these can't be the insurmountable hills. They've got to be stretches that are obtainable. So I think I've really fallen in love with, we've got this problem. What is the fix? How do you communicate the strategy to the greater organization and then show the religion and passion to deliver on it? And that's where, like, I think we'll talk later today. There's a lot of like terms that I've had fortune to build even the last 5 years, whether it's the rule of 150 club, this revenue algorithm that I wrote for software companies and how you look at a coefficient within it. That's all wrapped around annual recurring revenue and how you can bifurcate strategies from that. So my long-winded answer is I really like being the strategic leader that can really distill it down, make it clear. But again, I have such respect for the operational tenets that have to be there. So I never lose sight of that. I just don't, at this stage of my career, don't feel like rebuilding a bunch of operational practices. I'd rather have good leaders over it so they get better and they get perfected and we can focus on effective capital deployment. And I think the strategy is effective capital deployment. The how-to is being operationally efficient.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. And you just added a new leadership archetype to the mix, which is the strategic leader who's an effective communicator. And I think that's brilliant. So if you could take us maybe through a specific example where you felt like you really were able to really hone in on that rule of three, kind of effectively communicating the rallying cry and how that sort of shifted the mood of the organization and the executional focus. Is there an example that really sticks out to you where you felt like you did that really well?
Yeah, I would say like within the last 5 years, when I was CFO of Epicor, so an ERP software company within the supply chain, the make, move, sell economy within mid-market, which I won't take us off track, but I'm a huge believer in SMB. It's where 80% of the economy is. It's where really goods and services move. And the real working men and women of this country, in most countries, it's where they habitate. It was a company built on great vertical focus for 50 years, but they hadn't transformed in the way they should have, meaning their software was critical, their customers were irreplaceable, but there had been no clarity of strategy. And what it allowed me, what I really get excited about looking back is, so I rolled out 2 strategies when I was there. And the first one, not the most creative title, but it was really Epicor 2.0. And it was get the company, the leadership to understand that you have to pivot software companies into a SaaS financial profile, even if the product is not truly SaaS yet. So it allowed me to distill down into the leadership. We want to have this type of architected relationship with the customer, meaning the terms, the price dynamics, the housing hosted, not on-prem. And it was really, when I was able to distill that about here's where we are from a net recurring revenue perspective, meaning they were about 102%, and why we want to get to 110%, and what makes up that calculation, and why everything we do functionally matters, meaning if you're in human resources, your recruiting is going to be a difference because we're a software business, we're a people business. If you aren't hiring the best engineers, the best salespeople, the best back office people, then we won't be able to deliver to the customer. We won't be able to make our commitments. If you're in sales and you don't sell the right kind of structured contract to them, you're not lifting up the net recurring revenue. It allowed me to point them to, we want to be a SaaS financial profile business that is underscored by what is your net recurring revenue performance. And then you get into the dynamics. So what does that mean? Well, that means you sell subscriptions. You don't sell fixed term contracts. That means that you want customers on multi-year agreements. That means you want customers paying price increases or discount recovery. That also means you want those customers buying more licenses, seats, functions, upgrades. So effectively, you build this, what I call the annual recurring revenue triad, a triangle. And you have gross retention on one angle, you have annual price increase contract structure on another angle, and you have upsell upgrade on the top angle. And the driver, what I was driving out to the leadership is, we have an enterprise value of X. If we execute this way, I think our enterprise value will be Y, which will be a 3X cash on cash. So what I committed to them was the clarity of, you do this, and in under 3 years, I think you're going to have a 3X valuation on a very large investment. And then I got back into the simple math I was talking about. If you're a software company and you need to strive that 80% or more of your revenue is driven by recurring revenue, if you drive the net recurring revenue to 110%, you position the company to have almost double-digit revenue for perpetuity without additional new customers. Not that you're not going to target new, but you build that scalable sustainability. And that's what really excited me. We got rallied around, how do we become scalable and sustainable? So then we can go after the art of the possible. And then that matured when we were successful with Epicor 3.0, which was the intentional investment after we did a product rationalization of the products that are really the drivers, and to get them is to true SaaS ability as soon as possible, multi-tenant type of dynamic. But I didn't let the financial profile be held back by that. So that company was effectively a SaaS profile company before a lot of its products were closer to SaaS. But it was the ability to see where we were and why, if you want to be in the land of 1% forever, keep doing what you're doing. The fact is, when I left, they were a 9% organic growing company, and they were 1% when I joined. And if you look at the net recurring revenue when I was there, was 102%. When I left, it was almost 108%.
Wow.
And this is a big company. It was like a battleship. So personally, it gave me more self-confidence about when I was able to put those clear North Stars out there and those clear targets. The sales team, the engineering team, the large groups of customer support rallied to it, because then when you had town halls and you had communications, there were easy critical performance indicators we could talk about, and they knew why it mattered, and they knew why their function and their deliverables aligned to the greater good of the strategy. So that's where, if you get into these simplistic rules of the rule of three, not to exceed, clear North Stars, distilled clear strategies, you can rally companies, because human beings love the certainty of, like, success looks like this, non-success looks like that. They can go to that. They can rally to it, especially if you're going to have a leadership mentality of autonomy, but accountability, but never punitive. Bad news early is good news. Good news early is obviously good news. But the fact that you're moving with intention and transparency and speed and clarity, human beings, you've got to treat them like that. You've got to get out of this dynamic of, well, this subset I'll treat this way and this subset I'll treat that way. It's more of the directness and the transparency. People rally to it because you buy a sense of trust and confidence in them, that you trust them and they trust you now, because you're going to tell them the truth even when it's not good news.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, you just distilled essentially creating that North Star or rather transformation that Epicor was going through. You identified a KPI or metric, the NRR to target, and then some strategies on how to move it. I think that's super compelling and makes a lot of sense. And so you talked a lot about the human beings in that equation and how to communicate with them around this. So it brings me to my question around what are you seeing most either nowadays or currently or in the past several years, the biggest sort of hidden drag to growth in an organization that the folks or the human beings in the organization are feeling, but maybe nobody's talking about? What are some of the limiters that hold back some of that transformation that you've seen people
Yeah.
don't talk enough about?
Yeah. And that's, some of these will clearly just be my personal views.
Yeah.
I definitely think there is a dynamic of AI and what it's going to mean and how you monetize it and how you use it. And in the early days of, honestly, I tell my children the same thing. Technology has always helped humankind. My personal belief is longer term, I think we're going to regret AI, but it's out. There's like I'm not going to stop it. We're not going to stop it. Right now, AI is a tremendous efficiency tool. And look, I'm the executive sponsor for our internal, where I am now, our internal AI advisory council. So I can accelerate adoption of it, that you can really get to it lifts up finance organizations, product development, human resource. It lifts up everything. Longer term, just my personal view of self-recognizing algorithms, self-teaching, what dynamic do you get? I don't want social displacement where people can't find careers or jobs. And maybe I'm wrong and you evolve like they did during electrification. But in the here and now, it's an irreplaceable productivity tool. And it allows really good minds to be focused more on really quality additive work as opposed to work that is necessary but is not that additive. So I think the dragger right now is the market in total doesn't know what to make or not make of AI. So I think that is naturally existentially out there. I think a lot of companies suffer from a dynamic that they've culturally allowed themselves to move away from meritocracies. And they've gotten mixed up into the alphabets of the month about there's going to be justice for this and justice for that. When I'm a big believer in, I'll be honest, no, if it's controversial, it's equality, it's not equity. And that people should have a fair chance to have a similar opportunity, but our outcomes should not be the same. Our outcomes should be measured by what we deliver. And when you really run an organization from a standpoint of meritocracy, the input is significant. On face value, sometimes running it like that, it may not feel as good as a human being. And what feels good as a human being can be anti-productive. And it's actually opposite of each other. What at times can feel a little more cold or meritocracy is actually more humane and better for people, and people rally to it more. But initially, it doesn't feel that way. I think culturally, we have gotten distracted because I think we live in an era, no matter how hard we think life is now, it can't compare to when my grandparents were in the Great Depression. Life has gotten easy for us to some extent. So then we ponder on things that aren't as value additive. So I do think there's a cultural dynamic out there. I look at it as COVID comes and we all go fully remote. Look, my guidance was always, you never react to an extreme. I don't think companies should have done that. Just like I don't think they should now I'm old school. I don't think they should force back to 5 days. I've come to the belief that when you have, say, a hybrid, a 3-2, and people that are in reasonable distance of the office come to the office 3 days a week and work at home 2 days a week, I think they can be more productive than they've ever been, because what I think happens is they're in the office 3 days and the 2 days they're home, they're working, but they also have time to pick up laundry, balance some household stuff without interfering with their work. So then the weekends become pure and they come back in recharged. I think what we've run into as a society is we've overreacted to extremes. We've forgotten about meritocracy. The AI dynamic is kind of a holding pattern for people, and people, I would say in the next decade or so, you embrace it. The productivity efficiencies are going to be immeasurable. Like longer term, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm talking in decades when I'm not around here, and maybe I've seen too many Alien Earth or Terminator or Wall-E or whatever. Like the future never gets. Why is the future never written like in a sunny story? But I think right now the hangovers are, you do have those, and on a macro sense, you do have, the debates and the challenges going on with tariffs, and you do have the debates and challenges going on where the Fed fund rate is, and you can have camps of Milton Friedman economists, which, by the way, that's where my flag is planted, compared to Keynesians, which I think has a perfect record of never winning. So I think you have some of those dynamics that they're there, but where I'm also very positive is the amount of pent-up capital and the amount of pent-up people who are ready to go, I think is there. And I'm hopeful that if we just get some breakage in normalcy, I think the growth is there to happen. But right now, I do think the AI is there. I think companies are waking up that the fundamentals do matter, and that includes meritocracy. And then I think there's the macro sense of people aren't necessarily sure where it's going to go. But look, I'm a big believer. The Fed's going to depoliticize a little and get it right, but hopefully never go back to the welfare of zero interest, but get it to a reasonable interest rate. The tariffs people I think are going to start seeing they come and go, and they actually do generate revenue for the country and maybe give us more competition. And then within the U.S. being a little U.S. centric right now, I think the reemergence of, let's just call it our third round of being manufacturers. It's going to look different than the turn of the century, but I think the onshoring of some critical supply chain dynamics are also going to help the Western Hemisphere. I think in the greater globe too, because look, I'm biased. We're the most transparent economy, the easiest flow of goods, the strongest structured government and military underneath it. So all the things that matter fundamentally. So my long-winded answer to you is I do think it sits around AI. I think I will not let go of this bone about the cultural dynamics, because I have lived from companies that were being managed by the Korean War veterans to companies that went through the dynamics of the baby boomers to where we are now. And I think people have gotten too forgetful of the fundamentals that matter, and we always pay the price. You see it in the .com. You can see it in 08, 09. You can see it in fundamentals don't matter. This is a new go-go, and they do matter. Growth matters, but profit matters. Rewarding talented people of whomever they are matters. And building cultures that aren't stymied in some new Orwellian verse does matter. And I think all those things are coming together that I'm interested how corporate America, private and public, is opening up now. Like, I think we're seeing a move back to more of a meritocracy. I think we're getting a move definitely back to fundamentals about balanced growth, profitable growth. And I think there's so much capital pent up out there. I'm really hopeful that some of the external players calm down a little.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, just digging into the meritocracy piece a little bit. So as you see the opportunity to inject more of that into the system, sort of allow people to compete internally, let the best ideas win, and help grow folks that are succeeding and winning. If you see that balance off and maybe want to redirect it, what are some specific strategies that you might encourage an organization to adopt, or tactics in order to move the needle back the other direction to let some of that happen?
I think it first starts with people don't get trapped into the design of the day. First of all, structure with acceptable spans and controls. People shouldn't have too many people reporting to them. They shouldn't have too few. And the reason I'm starting there is that structure alone then allows for where the roles are. But then within there, it's an old football saying, or basketball, you dance with the one that brought you. That organizations have to be real accepting to where when there's opportunities, is there somebody in the organization? Do you look first in the organization? Is there somebody in the organization cross-functionally within the function that should be in that role? I think that builds the trust within the organization that my career is going to have growth, some of it horizontal and vertical, but it's going to be very diverse, and it's going to strengthen me as a professional. The other dynamic I think that wraps into that clarity is I've grown up around a bunch of performance management dynamics. I was at a public company where it was the most asinine performance. Like, I mean, it was like, what 12 objectives do you have? It's like, besides world peace. Um, the best I've ever seen was I had a really talented CHRO report to me, and we built up, it was a hard rule. The employees working with their managers got 3 objectives at the beginning of the year, not to exceed 3, but it was okay if it was 1 or 2. And then at mid-years, you did reviews on them. You're supposed to be talking to your employees all year. And at the end, you did them. So you could accomplish some of them and replace them. That forced management to get into the idea, if you can't tell somebody that works for you how they can be successful in 3 things or less, then there's something wrong with the role they're in or how we're structured. So I think you start with spans and controls. I think you start with dance with the one who brought you. I think you start with the clarity of success should be easily defined for both the manager and the employee. And it should tie directly to what we talked about earlier. What is the North Star? What is the strategy? Why does this help the greater good? And then lastly, I am tyrannical about this. Autonomy, accountability, non-punitive. Ask me how much a mistake bothers me. 0. Absolutely 0. And because if I were measured on my mistakes, I would never work again. And a mistake is not intentionality. A mistake is people making mistakes. And the rule is identifying it quickly, understanding why the mistake happened, and then correcting it so we try to avoid it again. But not worrying about it. I think it gets down to that's the structure you need. But if you see, a lot of it gets back to when you can define the success for that person, and you've got to get away from, a lot of employees today will say, well, one is they'll always say, I'm not compensated enough, but good. That shows me that American capitalism isn't dying, that employees are always saying that's the go that we want. But 2 is when I see I don't have a clear career path. Ask me how much of a career path I was given. You own your own career.
Yeah.
I think your manager owns, the company owns being clear of the opportunities. Because sometimes you can run into very talented people and the opportunities at that point in time, they're just not there anymore. And you got to have confidence as a manager. You can lose a really good person but don't let them leave for the wrong thing. Like, I have coached really good people into taking jobs on the outside, and I did not want to lose this person, but I honestly had no line of sight over the horizon where they were going to be really rewarded for their next role because it wasn't there. But I was also really intent, if you're going to leave for the right opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, let me help you. Like, because I'll look at it and I will tell you if your baby's ugly, or I will tell you if no, look, this is an IQ test. If you don't leave, now I'm wondering, are you as good as I think you are?
Yeah.
I think it all just starts and stops there, that they own their career. I think you own the ability. It's that equity equality. You own the ability to help them have a reasonable opportunity at those opportunities. You don't own their career ending. Like, I'm not going to coach you from A to Z.
Yeah.
And you own that. And I would just always coach, go to things that make you more well-rounded. Horizontal moves can be just as valuable as vertical moves. I had a lot of those within operations and back to finance, but I became more inquisitive and my business acumen went way up, as opposed to just staying in financial planning and analysis for 20 years. I don't think Vista would have initially ever looked at me if my resume had read audit, accounting, finance. When they looked at it, it was geographically diverse, but it was also, I was kind of like all over the map, setting up call centers for a customer support organization that was pure operations, being involved in manufacturing plants, being a financial analyst in a corporate area. So I kind of digress on that because it gets back to, I think that's how you make a company successful culturally. For the people that are proactive like that, and that's how you coach them. It starts with the structure. If you don't structure it right, then you get kind of choke points. If you don't give clarity on what success looks like, it's hard for even good people to know, like, does this matter? Is it good for me? And then if you don't give that ability for people to cross-functionally grab roles.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll put on there is I've come to this point in my career that usually what looks like the safe decision by management is usually the risky, and the risky is the safe. We need somebody in FP&A. Okay, let's look for people that have 20 years of FP&A, as opposed to let's find somebody with strong aptitude attitude that have maybe never done or done little FP&A. The second candidate, in my experience, has always crushed the first. When I joined Tech, this is a true story. When I joined Tech, I had a chief legal officer reporting to me, and they were not right for the role, the company, et cetera. And Jason Parkman, the CEO of Tech, super talented guy, he and I like kind of knew it like right away, and kind of joking, it's my problem. My first weekend, it's my problem. And so my first month there, I let that individual go and replaced them with the legal intern, became the general counsel of the company, who had freshly out of law school, was the legal intern. But this individual, Jared Duke, crazy aptitude, even better attitude. And we're small. And I'm thinking, I have a talented CRO who has been in software negotiation after software. Getting Jarrett really close to him for a couple months, he'll know like what it is. Legally, his mind was exceptional. His wanting to do well and his ability to exercise, and I saw early how he thought about people he wanted to interview for the company, was very high. But Jarrett's still the chief legal officer of Tech and has been through, this time I think it might be 3 exits. It done double digits in acquisitions. But you look back at it, I remember I had a mentor at Vista, and she was like kind of laughing when I did it, but she said, well, we'll see, Sam. But she actually was like, they were totally supportive of it because it kind of follows that dynamic. I wouldn't do that at $1 billion company because I wouldn't want to put that on them, but I would definitely promote a guy like that up there.
Yeah.
But it gets back to what looks risk adverse is usually risky. What's risky is usually not risky. And I see that in that culture, the question you're talking about, a successful culture. People that have worked around me and with me know that I'll throw the long ball. They will get, when I say if you perform, you'll get the opportunity, they see it. I will do it.
Yeah.
I'm not into this, you go here, then here, then here, and this promotional like dioramic. I'm more about skip 3 levels. I'll put you in the game because the aptitude attitude outside of very technical roles trumps the day for me every time.
Have you, so just digging in that a little bit, how have you found the ability to scale that, let's say through hiring? And obviously there's some select opportunities to do that, but to really make that a part of the fabric of how a company is built, is sort of giving people those opportunities and succeeding more often. Inevitably, some of those things may not work out. But are there any specific ways that you found to be able to really scale that approach? Again, I believe that you have a great eye for that and a lot of experience to see that, but to help other managers and other folks see that?
I think sometimes it goes into, if you can have enough working examples where they can see and they can understand, why does this function do so well? Why does that function do so well? I normally have a good ability to let people become vulnerable, that let their guard down, ask me the questions about, hey, I was thinking about this or that. Or sometimes at the executive level, I'll nudge a little about, hey, I think that person's exceptional. You should let the horse run. Like if I think you would. And if you do, at the EL, when you present it, I will lean in 100% that's a great idea. Like let them know I'm going to be there for all of it so they understand there's no risk in the decision. Like it'll either be a good example, or it'll be we learned a lesson and we do something different. But when it's a we succeeded, to make sure that they actually get the context or they get the credibility that they led it. They were the executive. I think that helps a lot. And the one is to lead by example, but 2 is sometimes nudge them a little. I have a quote. I have something I say. Some of my CEOs, it makes them nervous. Some of them, they get it. I really do believe in letting the horses run. I say, don't forget, we're all still on a ranch. I get it. But maybe it's a 10,000 acre ranch. So there's a fence. They just can't see it. But there is a fence. You got to let them run.
Yeah.
And if you do, you'll be surprised at innovation. because I've lived in very big companies where the horses are never allowed to run. And sometimes there's rationale for it for sure. But it's also why, probably for a different podcast, I think a lot of big companies are surviving or succeeding in spite of themselves. They may just have an economic dynamic or a distributorship. But if you really get into the underneath the sheets of how they're really doing, they're really unhealthy organizations and they're really kind of a melting iceberg. I mean, I think all the large original 100 listed companies in America, I think all of them are gone but GE. And GE's like 3 companies now. That these companies, like I'll date myself, Woolworths was the most valued company in America, I think, in the 1960s. Nobody, more than 3/4 of your audience won't even know what I'm talking about, Woolworths. Well, they were Walmart before Walmart. So I think that happens of scale. So, and I think it really happens because people do forget how companies get from small to medium to big, really successful. They lose their DNA. And now your DNA has to adjust. I get it. But you don't have to lose it. And I think a lot of them do.
Yeah. Well, look, we started this part of the conversation around sort of how to nudge that meritocracy back into the center of focus. And I think you talked about, you made a lot of thoughts sort of swirl through my head around how to practically do that. And you were talking about sort of what you reward and sort of recognize, I think, what you see, what you notice in people, and then having the employees also take ownership for their own path. And it makes me think, and I'm sure where you are now, I know many of the people that are there, I know are really great at this, like the importance of an organization. There's this thing, like when I was growing up in the software tech business, it was, you got to get visibility. You got to get visibility. It felt like a dirty thing. It's like, is that self-promotion? Is that like, what is that? But actually what I learned from these great leaders of what it was is their ability to stand up great work. And find opportunities to recognize it so that other people could see it. And so now you're in an executive team meeting, great work has been stood up around you. And now other folks in other departments have visibility into who's up and comer, or who's got a lot of talent ahead of them. But if that's hidden or that's not necessarily pulled out, it's hard to find that talent sometimes. And then you talked about the second part of this is in letting those horses run, and how do you identify the folks that are ready to run. And I think you used the words around sort of curiosity, humility, like you're looking for certain qualities in those people that show that they're ready to take that on, right? That they have the right ingredients that you would be looking for someone who's got that headroom, and obviously someone who's not willing to raise their hand or take that initiative we just talked about, or not being able to come to you and saying, hey, here's what I don't know, or here's what I want to learn. So I think those are really, really astute points and things that you could put together and scale pretty well. I mean, that's part of why I've always loved even these, kind of 9-box calibration exercises. In some ways they feel so administrative and so check the box. And in other ways, if you facilitate a great conversation, a lot of barriers can be broken down because a lot of people can get visibility into the talent of the organization. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You and I 100% aligned.
Yeah.
Everything you just said, I'm definitely there. And the visibility is, I'll bastardize the comment, but Nick Saban has a great analogy about the bus and how you fill the bus. He says low performers don't like high performers, and high performers don't like low performers. So you're responsible for filling the bus the right way if you want to get to the destination. And what I have noticed, and I've seen it in my career, I've seen very high caliber people I've worked for that you get the visibility. A lot of my career, unfortunately, it's been trench warfare, and I've had to scrap for it. And not like self-promotion, but just do really good work.
Yeah.
And it's a chance to present, to speak to people you can impact. They hear your voice and it's clear. What I've always found, I think I'm pretty good at, is just because I've experienced something through my career that I didn't like, I didn't become that monster. I have always promoted people that I work around me or work for me that are good. I give them as much airtime as possible. I don't need it. I'm very confident that people on my staff get a lot of exposure to the executive leadership team. They get exposure to the board of directors. And I do it because of a couple reasons. One is they deserve it. And regardless of what may have happened in your career, do the right thing. They deserve it. Two is I want them to see it because I am very proud of, and I will brag here. I will say I have always built up the best succession plans of all the software companies I've been at. My successor has always been there. And I'm very happy about financial successes and all that. But I'm also happy is the last 4 heads of FP&A that worked for me all became CFOs immediately after working for me. And then one of them actually was my successor at Epicor to the CFO of Epicor at a very, young age and career wise. But the board knew him and they knew how good he was. They knew all my CFOs, but they know my chief accounting officers. But I also delve in and put pressure on other areas about, this is an exceptional like product engineer. You need to give them more scope and more exposure. That when we have internal meetings for the company, the leadership meetings, not the board, I try to get it to where I'm presenting about 10% of the time for my entire functional area, and everything else is one of my direct reports or theirs. So that one, they get the experience, the visibility, the focus, and two is I don't read a lot of business books, to be honest with you, and I sometimes think those who can't write, but there are some exceptional books, and like I always took away from good to great the dynamic of tier leadership. And if I remember it right, tier 5 is the best form of leadership, and kind of like a Cliff Notes version. If you're a tier 5 leader, the company will be better if you leave. And that always has stuck with me. And I get it. And it's the leverage back on like Nick Saban. You think about Nick Saban left right after they almost won another national championship, right? They had another great year. But he left, and at first people would say, oh, they're not as good. But if you look at DeBoer and what they're doing now, Alabama is like Nick knew they can get better if him leaving now. I think very hard for people to do. And a lot of people that are good leaders are tier 4 because they don't quite make the company better if they leave. There's like something that's held back. And I hope I don't do that. I hope that I get to my last role, that I'm building up somebody way better than me and a staff that's better than me. So when I leave, they're kind of like, thank God Sam left. We're better now. Well, I do believe in that though. And that's why I believe in the visibility dynamic. I tell my daughters all the time, there's a difference between confidence and cocky. There's a difference between advocating for yourself and being a self-promoter. There are times it is okay. You have got to represent who you are, but you do it through the quality of your work. You speak about the work you're doing, or if you're playing sports, the example of what you do on the court or the field or wherever you are. But there's nothing wrong with advocating for yourself. And as a leader, if you are not helping to self-promote other people that are talented, I think you're a failed leader. And I saw in big companies, the C players do literally hire the D players. And then one thing I can tell you I'm not scared of, I am not scared of hiring people better than me. I think most of the people that have worked for me are smarter than me. I think they're better than me. It doesn't scare me at all. I sleep better at night because I know, Rachel's got control of the books. We are not closing wrong. We are not violating GAAP. Joe or Tim are getting so in front of continual budgeting that we have confidence that the next 3 quarters look like this, and that they're ideating. If we're using all of my ideas, we're in trouble. So I'm also a big believer in I like to spurn conversation, and I try to work at people getting vulnerable in their understanding. I'm not projecting what the answer is. I'm trying to get the answer out with, is it right? Is it wrong? Like challenge. I give people freedom. They'll know. I always say in meetings, no bad questions, no bad comments. There's nothing you can say in here that's going to hurt your standing or upset me, as long as you don't insult my mother. If you insult my mother, then we're crossing a red line. But everything else is just that freedom of let's go at it. Let's go at it and have the discussion of ideas. And normally I go with somebody else's idea. Mine's just out there kind of as chum in the water to let them
get
know,
it going.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll intentionally put out something that I know is bad to cause like the ones that are intellectually honest to be like, even though they may say,
come on, Sam.
Yeah, they don't know it. They like, I really put it out there on purpose, like just so I can get the conversation going. Because I don't know what the right idea is, but I know what a really bad one is. So like if I throw that out there, who will bite? And they always, and then it starts the conversation.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I want to go back to the MitraTech experience that you had in particular. I think if I'm getting this right, that may be the biggest cash on cash return, maybe in Vista's history, or at least one of the largest ones.
I like to claim it still is. I don't know if it is. I
Okay.
don't. I don't know if
Okay.
I'm going to get a call later, but it at the time it was, and it's definitely in the top 3 still.
Yeah. And that's, again, having worked in a Vista portfolio company, I understand what's required to get there, and didn't get a chance to do that and didn't do that, but understand, that body of work. So I'd love to kind of dig into that a little bit. How would you characterize, if we go to leadership archetypes of what version of Sam you had to bring to that opportunity, what version of you had to show up to help get to that level of success? And would love to hear a little bit about maybe what were some of the, peaks and valleys of that journey that we could dig into and learn from, maybe biggest lessons. Yeah.
So that was my first non-public job.
Mm.
It was my first foray into private equity, and some friends of mine thought maybe a mistake because I had left a rather large division of Rockwell Automation to this $23 million a year company. And there were a couple of moments that I love movies. So there's a great scene in the movie Platoon where Charlie Sheen's digging a foxhole and he's writing a letter to his grandmother in his head. And at one point he says, "Grandma, I think I made a big mistake coming here." Now, granted, he's in Vietnam. I'm just at MitraTech. But of course, those cross your paths. I think what helped me get through it is what helped me have success was I had a lot of diversity in my 20 years at Sherwin-Williams Paint Company and Rockwell Automation. On top of it, I had enough humility that I'm a confident guy, but I'm not a cocky guy. Like I can openly tell you if I'm going to go into a competition and the odds are very high, I'm going to lose. Now, don't misjudge me. I'm still going to fight 100. I'm going to fight right to the death. But I'm not unrealistic about, like, if I stepped in the ring with a young Mike Tyson, yes, the probability is I'm going to get knocked out, possibly hurt, but I'm still going to fight. Just I know the outcome. There, I didn't have the ego that, Robert Smith had created an incredible private equity bank. And, my bias is he transformed private equity definitely around software and technology. I think all the other banks that have come along into it are doing, a lot of them doing great jobs, but a lot of them really are mimicking parts of what Vista did. So when I joined it, I knew who I was. Like I can work hard. I think, communicate well with others. I'm inquisitive. I've never sold a software company in my life. And at that point, how many has Vista sold? So I'm going to listen, learn, and I'm going to execute on everything they advise to execute. So I'm going to charge the gun. Even at times I'm like, I don't think this makes sense. So I just got after it. Like I went after how they looked at recurring revenue, and how do you look at repositioning it? And what are these things they call maintenance sweeps? And just went after the best practices. So I did that with total humility, like never like a complicator, never like mucking it up, just knowing that if I do what they say, they've sold hundreds of assets, billions and billions of dollars of creation. I'd never done any of it. So I had that sense of where I was, but it also by having it, I was working with a really talented person on my staff, Alan Taylor, who he went on to become a CRO, he went on to become a chair of revenue ops. He's a COO now, like just has had several successful exits, like really incredibly sharp guy. And as he and I would grind through it, like we knew how to like take that white paper, make it better. Like it allowed me to start participating in the game about how the budget process should be cleaner that they started using, how other things can be better. But I never held back on, they're telling me, they're guiding me, this is how we need to think about the business. This is the investment thesis. And I followed it religiously. Because again, know who you are in the moment. Know when you're the follower or you're the leader. Know when you're like the one that has to take the ball or the one that you should follow them anywhere they go because they're successful. So I think that's the Sam that existed there that was probably better then than I am now about unyielding sense of just I'll follow what they've done because they've done it well before. But then on top of it, I've been thrown in difficult situations at big companies where way less supported than it felt in that environment. In that environment, they were smart people. You could raise your hand. I mean, you run into a problem at Rockwell Automation setting up a call center and nobody's ever done it. Like, good luck. Like, it's good luck. Like, you better figure it out. So there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
But then when it coming to that organization, what is this thing they call maintenance sweep? How does it work? How do I drive at it to make successful? And by the way, there are people I could call that, hey, I'm seeing this and this. What do you think? Like, that'll actually help. So I think I had a sense of humility and vulnerability, but I complimented it as I think I have a good work ethic, and I went at it. I worked hard and I took a lot of responsibilities on, and I worked with a really good young executive leadership team, and the culture was just good. We could have a good time with each other. We all talked about the real stuff that matters. We all aired our frustrations. It was just a healthy environment. But me personally I had been hired by a successful organization, and I was going to try to learn why they were successful, which means I was going to follow their direction and not try to resist it.
Yeah.
And I think that it was that simple, I think.
Yeah. Well, just a quick sidebar on, because I had a similar experience coming into a Vista company where actually a lot of my peers or folks that I talked to along the way were afraid of actually joining a Vista company, afraid that they would have to follow some playbooks they didn't want to follow or run best practices that they didn't want to run, and they would just be told what to do. And then when you realize, and I said, well, first of all, I want to see what this is all about because I've had a ton of success and I want to have similar success and I want to learn from this environment. So I'm going to go even for no other reason, just for that learning, but go with that openness. And it's funny, you get in there and you're like, wow, these are just really smart decisions.
Can I just call the BS on it? There is no playbook. To the podverse out there is no playbook. We're not handing what it is figured out, like Robert figured out, these companies aren't operationally efficient. So what are good operational practices?
Yeah.
And one reason they said they liked my public experience is they said, you've been some really good organizations. And it's true, like Sherwin-Williams Paint Company is an operational machine. Like just, they did acquisitions very similar. I found out later, 15 years later, they were doing acquisitions in the way that Vista did them. Investment thesis, really timely integration, like just a machine, just clipping through it. And it's so, all in the end, you looked at it as like, no, these are.
Why wouldn't I do this?
You're right. These are just pragmatic decisions. If this increases value of the investment long term, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. And then, and absolutely. And then there's obviously things that you hadn't thought about, but they're all very, very smart, sound. And like you said, everybody around the table is very focused on what's in the best interest of everyone involved and just focused on winning and success. But it's funny, I have this other theory on the other side of it, which is the folks that probably have more challenge, or sometimes when your company gets acquired, the analogy I kind of give is you might be kind of like the patient on the operating table. Like no one likes to have their chest plate cracked open and open heart surgery. But if you're the surgeon coming in to do surgery, it's not that bad actually.
Right. Right. That's right. Yeah.
Because you have less of that emotional attachment to what's going on. And so I mean, again, I had a phenomenal experience. So I agree with you on that. I guess, well, part of my question to get into.
You burned your playbook when you were done?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and so I guess when it comes to that, would you say that at MarTech it was maybe more of a buy and build, like through acquisition? Was that kind of the growth strategy there?
No, it was. So the first time we sold, the growth was split right down the middle, organic and inorganic. And like where they make you better is we had operational improvements that clearly improved our growth, got our net recurring revenue up higher because we were charging price increases the way you should. But it allowed us to realize the opportunity for monetization. And by being under that practice for like a year and a half, allowed Jason and I to open our eyes. Wait, we have something out here called a portal that the law firms have been using forever and not paying for to get all their invoices assigned and paid by all of our customers. Why aren't we charging them for this free portal? Why aren't we making more money so we can invest in our product and increase our profits? So we got a lot of growth out of that. Organically, we were growing. The NRR was close to 120%. because the software was so mission critical. And then we had best practices of price increases and other dynamics. And we had a talented sales team. I mean, they were hitting their numbers, and it's a model that doesn't move fast. General counsel offices don't replace that often. They were finding new logos, but they were also winning competitive deals. And on top of it, the first exit, we also had done 7 acquisitions. A lot of them were really small. One was pretty big at the end, but when you looked at the end, what we started at and the revenue we were when we sold, it was right down the middle. That half was organic, half was inorganic. And because we had monetized that one feature, we could have sold without the acquisitions. It would have been a lower dollar check, but it would have been the same multiple because the economics were there. When you add $15 million of recurring revenue in 30 days at a 95% EBITDA fall through, it has like a really magical impact on the valuation. But the only reason I think, maybe Jason thinks differently, but the only reason I think Jason and I got even smarter looking at those stuff because we had started falling into this operational rhythm with them about how you're looking at value all the time. So I just think it makes you better. But yeah, that one was because I saw during the era of zero interest welfare, no acquisitions bad, which is so not true. And you saw all these buy and tuck, which I think diluted some values, but you can get away with a lot of mistakes when the interest is that low. I have never been a part of an investment where the exit thesis was going to be based on just acquiring and tucking. I've always been in environments where the organics are as important or more than the inorganic.
Yeah. And I think you were also, as part of, was Spreadfast, Lithium.
I came in Lithium
Okay.
right after Pete Hess had joined. And the good thing about that is I got to meet Pete Hess, got to work with him, incredibly talented executive. The downside of it was Lithium we shouldn't have bought Spreadfast. If we wouldn't have, we would have been a really nice exitable model that I think like a year into it, Pete was very customer facing, charismatic guy. I mean, he's a former quarterback of Princeton and he looked like the former quarterback of Princeton. Some people just get the royal flush in life, like
Yeah.
6'2", blue eyes, athlete, anything else we left off the table. And he had grown the organic growth. We were hitting almost 10%. And I had engineered in a scalable way, our pro forma EBITDA was up to 30%. So we were becoming a rule of 40 company. Just a little overconfident that like rising tides will lift all boats. And this Spreadfast, like we didn't need it, but we did it. And it was an anchor.
Yeah.
So Lithium Lithium had a great community, great care. Spreadfast had great customer base, but they were lacking the operational discipline we had. And I would say our products were more sticky as you can be in Marcom. I mean, Marcom's to be fair about it too, that is a tough industry. It can chew up the best executives.
Yeah. So what would be some of your takeaways for just how to assess, doing acquisitions in general, maybe what you would look at differently up front, maybe have part of the playbook, whether it's from Tech or that experience or others, where have you sort of netted in that?
Well, so my scoreboard is, I think I've done 31 acquisitions in the last 15 years, and there's only been one failure. A super majority of them are somewhere between an A- to an A. I mean, they were really good. There's several that are Bs, but a B is a B. There was one in a Spreadfast. It was a failure. And here's the learning is, and I would say it to my friends on the sponsor side who were super talented and to myself. One is don't underestimate the culture of what you're buying. And I do believe when you buy companies, this is going to sound harsh, but I mean it from an accretive standpoint. Your role as the buyer is to destroy their culture. They need to have your culture and there needs to be no negotiation on it. And it needs to be done very timely and everything else. You're acquiring a company that's made of human beings. And what looks harsh, if you're transparent and all the shoes drop the first 1 to 2 days of close, you actually long-term buy more credibility, better health. You don't need 2 cultures. And if you wrote the check, you should pick the culture you want and everybody adheres to it. So don't underestimate that. Also, in the 11th hour, when you see something that doesn't really align to what they said the number was, you should pull the figurative Toyota manufacturing cord where anybody on a Toyota factory can stop the line. And that's why Toyota has the quality it does, right? You pull that line. If it's a real critical performance indicator and it's not adding up, no matter how late it is in the game, you better stop going forward until you reconcile whether you're looking at it wrong or you are looking at it right, and maybe it's a showstopper. And I would say that's what we underestimated as a team. The cultural part, I didn't underestimate. I personally wanted to go in there and go down to the proverbial studs because I could sense it a mile away.
Yeah.
Where I own is not being more vocal on that second part. When something just didn't seem right in the 11th hour, like we're the buyers, they don't have a lot of suitors. So what if we say stop? Like, let's stop and get all these smart minds. Let's look at nothing but this for 2 weeks. And it either my suspicion's right, and then there's a bigger discussion, or it's wrong, or it's right and it can be addressed. Fortunately, my suspicion was right, but then we lived with it. So I think don't have the arrogance where I think myself and the sponsors, we had some arrogance that our rising tides would lift that boat. We're good. We know who we're doing. We've got these operational plays. I'll never be that arrogant again. And I also make sure you have the courage and make sure you're giving people on the team the courage to speak up. Hey, I think we should pull a ripcord. Here's why. They may not be right, and you may talk it through and say no, or you may hear it and say, hey, it's serious enough. Let's pull it. But whether decision you make sure they know it's not punitive. Good that you raise your hand. Better to do that than us make a mistake. And the cultural thing, I should have been even more vocal about if we are going to do it, like I can play the bad guy. I think my role is to make sure in that situation, I think my role is to give a gap of separation for the CEO so they can stay magnanimous in the process. And maybe sometimes you have to be the Luca Brasi, not the one that sleeps with the fishes, the really bad guy before that, if people have ever read the prequel.
Yeah.
That you have to enforce so then the CEO can come back in and say, this is really a good idea. He or she can say it in more of a constructive manner. And I think that's your role as a strategic partner, is sometimes to play the bad guy for the betterment of the investment.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I've learned I'll never be that self-assured again that, oh yeah, like of course it'll be fine once we acquire it. And the culture, like if we don't agree that this is in the culture you may want, may be different from what you have now, but we're all going to have this. There can't be. That's why I worked for a big company that was really good at acquisitions. I worked for one that was really bad, and the one that was bad at it, those acquisitions kind of sat on an island, never were pulled into the greater. Us.
Yeah. Okay, that's very insightful. So I want to go a little deeper into like learning mode, because hearing you talk, and I've spent some other time with you, I know I would love to be on an executive team with you, and like, 6 o'clock and I'm trying to figure out how to make the number for the quarter, or how we're going to make the, we're 15% down between now and the end of the year. And I need to come get some ideas or riff on some stuff. So you mentioned earlier, revenue algorithm. You kind of gave a nod to like, you have a revenue algorithm that you built, and I'm curious what that is. If you could tell me more about that. What is that?
Yeah. So it's really simple.
Okay.
So there's 3 coefficients. It's a really basic formula. Software companies are based off of their NRR plus new bookings plus other revenue. Other revenue is typically professional services, but it can be some other dynamics, managed services, whatever. And within that dynamic, the most important coefficient is the NRR, which breaks into that annual recurring revenue triangle or triad. And that's why you go after the gross, the price increase, and the upsell. That is the dynamic. So within that triangle, where I try to guide companies is, if they're not where they need to be, you need to start putting off digestibles. For example, let's just say your NRR is 95. You need to put off a digestible rally cry of how do you get to 100? And then what are you doing within each of the functions for those angles? For example, what is product doing to differentiate and strengthen the core product so that the gross retention can get better? What is product doing on new features and functions out that sales need so they can do more upsell? What is legal and deal desk doing to make sure you sell better contracts so that the annual price increases go up, longer contracts so the gross retention goes up? You index on that. And I would always advise most software companies, unless if you're already batting like, 120 or whatever, then it's more of like, just stay the course. And at that point, you would flex into the coefficient of the new bookings. And then you get into my bias on build to buy. And so I'm a big believer now in life that engineers will always tell you they can build anything. And when it's outside of the core, they can. It'll take twice as long as they say, cost twice as much as they say, and be twice as bad as they say. So I'm a big believer that you build in the core and you buy on the adjacencies. And then once you buy, that becomes part of the core. One example at Epicor was needed a configure price quote tool. If our engineering team would have built it, they'd still be building it. So we bought a great configure price quote tool. Then you integrate it into the core. Now, when I would say, hey, build or build on a CPQ, of course, build, don't buy. So I think when you get into the new bookings, that's where I get really keen on, one, the commission plans. This seems really basic. The commission plans really aligned with what is successful for the sales professional is the right thing for the company. Sales is coin operated, and that's a compliment. So I'm a big believer in putting out a plan that will pay them more than they've ever been paid if they sell the structure that optimizes the company. Epicor, when I was there, I think when I joined, their annual commission expense was about $24 million a year. And when I left, it was close to $48 million a year. But when I joined, their growth was 1%. When I left, their growth was almost 9%. So would you spend $24 million more dollars to generate $90 million more in annual revenue? Of course you would.
Yeah.
So when I get into new bookings, I start getting inquisitive about, one is the blocking and tackling. Is the commission plan really, one, very clear that they can do math in their head while they're doing a deal about, hey, if I do this, this, and this, my check's going to be bigger and bigger and by default, it's better for the company. So is there clarity of there? It shouldn't be a calculus problem. It should be really basic math. So is that aligned? Do you have a aligned M&A strategy that you're meeting with product, go-to-market, and corporate dev bi-weekly so that you're getting those first two to align on what the product needs, what the customer is demanding, so you can throw out what would look like a Venn diagram of nets out instead of just hunting like 500 targets. You would know, for example, we need business intelligence, we need CPQ, or we need manufacturing execution system dynamics. And Corp Dev can go after what are the 10 or 12 within those. I'm also a big believer in that to plagiarize what I plagiarized at Epicor. So we called our acquisition strategy Moneyball off of Billy Bean. And it was literally coaching the company. They kept saying every time we lost an acquisition, it was a loss. I go, no, some of the best acquisitions are the ones you avoid. Start going after runners on base. It's not size of acquisition, it's the quality of the acquisition. So I got the company to repivot. We're going to look at stuff from 5 to 20 million annual revenue, but it's hitting those Venn diagrams. We don't have CPQ. We don't have business intelligence. We don't have MES. We don't have process. And start finding those exciting companies that almost always have better software than you, truer SaaS, and get them when they're cheap, relatively cheap. The founder is going to make a really good check proportionally, but they acquired back then a CPQ product for a fraction. Like, because I used to joke with the corp dev guy, maybe we should quit our jobs and go work for this company because I think we're buying it for 40. And Vince, if you and I had like a couple years of this, I think this would be 400. And I got really enamored with that approach to acquisitions. I believe in the Moneyball theory of acquisitions now, the real quality within that SMB size of what they are, but they are really hitting one of those Venn diagram fishnets. And that, to me, that with commission planning outside of the obvious, the right talent within a sales organization will drive the new bookings if I get back to the sausage making. Most companies, and I include a lot of public companies, I think have non-existent or terrible lead to cash operational systems. Like, do they truly funnel management their whole dynamic? Do they have a really defined funnel management execution on it, pipeline, predictable analytics into it that feeds into then the closure of the deal, the collection of the cash, the customer repository? And I think when you get into that form of the algorithm of the new bookings, it's about the commission plans. It's about the right complementary M&A, and it's about the underlining tenets of the lead to cash system. And the last piece of the algorithm, it's kind of an afterthought. Like if I'm a software company, my perfection would be able to outsource all your professional services. If you really had a partner that could do it all and just get it off of your profit and loss statement, get bigger by getting smaller, because the best you're ever going to do is 25 or 30% margin.
Yeah.
And it's dilutive. And I always had to influence customers when we were going in there. Don't worry about scope creep. The faster we can implement, the better for me, because the software stood up. You're more likely to never cancel, and you're more likely to buy more. And by the way, I make a fraction on this part of the business that I do on the software. So professional services, necessary evil. If you don't have a good partner, then you better have, it's one of the most thankless jobs outside of customer service. You better have an exceptional head and leaders within professional services. But those are afterthoughts. That's like you attach that to every sale. And that's why I put no energy into that part of the algorithm. Yeah. But I evolved from, you get the NRR right, and then within the new bookings, the blocking and tackling. And a lot of it for me in the blocking and tackling starts with, if you got the right M&A approach and you have the right commission plan and you have the right lead to cash, the new bookings will be there. Salesmen and women, they are motivated by president's clubs, right? They're motivated by big commission checks, and they should be. And, I'll end the part with, I am a religious believer in the fact of, if a software company is successful, the highest paid person in the company any given year should be in sales. Stop for me. They should make more than the CEO because you're all in sales. And the reality is, well, why are you saying that about the executives? The executives are playing the long-term incentive plan that by them doing really well, the equity will be worth more. But also by them doing very well, you get to buy more companies, you get to do great corporate events, you get to invest in better benefits, you get to hire talented people, you get to reward good people. So I'm, as a CFO, like, I'm dogmatic about that the person standing on the stage at the president's club, CEO club, sales club, whatever it is, should, had a massive commission check that year.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's not true in corporate America today because, are you familiar with the conservative editorial writer, George Will?
No.
Really, really great writer, and was a great thought leader on a lot of shows. I'm aging myself, like in the 80s and 90s. And he's an incredible baseball historian and an aficionado of baseball. And he's on Ken Burns' baseball. He's in it all the time. He had an awesome analogy that he was comparing CEOs and baseball players. And in the late 70s, I'll be directionally right here. The late 70s, the average baseball player made something like 7 times more than the average worker. And the average CEO made like 7 or 10 times more than the average entry-level employee. Now you fast forward to now, and the average baseball player and the average CEO make 500 times more than those same people. And there's a disconnect in all that. And it's not to take us down some social dialogue, but what I'm saying is it gets back to, if we have a chance to grow and our commission plan is built right in a software, especially private equity-owned software company, that salesperson should make more than that CEO that given year.
Yeah.
Longer term, we both know that's not true of what happens on the exit. But to me, that is a really good leader, because I've been around really good leaders. Like Jason Parkman would accept that all day long because he knows the game we're playing. I've had other CEOs I won't mention that'll go unnamed. No, that's not how they thought. And money's being left on the table with the investment.
Yeah.
When that's your ethos and because you're already paid well, and the equity you're building is like multi-generational changing what they're doing. And that's the game you're supposed to be playing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Well, you said a phrase that is near and dear to my heart, which I think a lot about, is sort of money being left on the table. Because, as a revenue leader in my career, you have one job really in the growth. That's the one job, right? And no matter how well you think you're doing or not doing, you always know you're leaving something on the table. And so I'm curious, because in what we just talked about, first of all, I just love the clarity and simplicity with which you sort of broke down the revenue algorithm. It's a thing that could live on a whiteboard or a poster board somewhere. And I had a bunch of
beautiful slides if you
I'm sure. I do want to see them. And I'm pretty sure, because as I was thinking about it, there was other follow-up questions that I had related to different kinds of decision making. Like one of the proverbial questions that you have to be prepared to answer as a revenue leader is the board comes to you and says, "I'm going to give you $1 million, tomorrow. What would you do with it?" Right? And tell me if I'm getting this wrong, but I would probably look at that revenue algorithm, decide where the balance of weight needs to be, and that's probably where those dollars are going.
Right. You nailed it. You got it. That's what.
Right? I love that.
The height of sophistication.
Well, let me just check. Sam's last slide, and I can tell you.
Yeah, is the triangle going to get stronger or not?
Right.
Don't spend it.
Is it in the product? Is it in the capacity? Is it in the something we would buy or partner? So I think that's brilliant. So again, I won't ask the rest of the follow-up questions because you just answered them. But I do with regards to leaving money on the table. Where do you see those opportunities most in your career? Like if there's a company out there that says, "Tony, good news, bad news. Good news, I'm growing 9-11% every year. Bad news, I'm growing 9-11% every year. Like I got to bend the curve up on this thing for growth." Where would you advocate someone who's stuck like that to look for this found money, found revenue opportunities? Like where do you normally see that being left behind?
Maybe surprising, not surprising.
Yeah.
Going back to the triangle, most of the money is being left on the commission plans are not really aligned to maximizing the deal value. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Are you really properly paying for annual price increases? Are you really properly paying for longer term contracts? Are you really rewarding, if you have an organization that has to cross sell, are you really rewarding people to carry the entire bag? Meaning you may sell product A in your group, but the company has a product B, C, and D. Are they incentivized to cross-functionally sell? The commission plans are never looked at hard enough because the people don't build proper rev ops organizations that really incentivize. I will pay you more money than you can ever understand if you do these things. So I would start with the commission plan alignment with the maximization of the enterprise value of the company. The other thing I see in there is such a massive miss on an M&A strategy that follows, like I'm using triangles all the time, but the Egyptians weren't wrong about a lot of architecture. Those buildings are still there. And a lot of American buildings aren't even 100 years old. And they're not doing that well. It's to get after the M&A strategy and having that when go-to-market is a part of that triangle on the M&A. And when I've learned really quick, I understand the sales animal very well. When they're passionate about getting something, that usually means it's not because they're over the horizon and seeing how the market's changing. They're like, if they give me this, I can make $100,000 more a year, and I'm losing deals and because of this. I can't say enough about coordinating the M&A with the product team to grow the sales. So those two, I think, are missed every time. And then lastly, it's around enablement and hiring. You can't overestimate how important focused enablement training is in the organization. And then I can't overestimate the right kind of hiring. You can't get every sales leader from an SDR program. So you have to have your mix of your skilled enterprise hunters with a proper program that's building future sales leaders. And I don't think it's out of SDRs. I think you can start them there, but I would elevate an SDR then into the customer success organization and have them become a customer success manager that owns a quota in renewals and upsells within the existing base. And then you send that man or woman into the sales and they are armed to the teeth.
Yeah, you're just highlighting probably a more natural step in responsibility, getting to run without, and then so it's more of a probably a happy path to,
right.
yeah.
A hybrid kind of target. Like,
right.
well, now I've got this variable comp thing. If I do this and this, and I've got this customer group I'm around.
Plus you have the empathy now for what goes on the other side of the equation, which does not hurt the organization, down the road. Now, well, one other thing to dig into there, you mentioned on the M&A side, coordinating product and sales and that M&A. What were you referring to there specifically in the M&A case?
So on the meetings that I drive in the organizations we're at, we really start the meeting with, one is a talented corp dev is going to see, hey, here's ways we can go within the market to increase our enterprise value. And they're going to have opinions. But I want that bounced off of sales and go to market. But then also I expect sales I expect go to market more than product to come to the discussion with, what do you need to sell? Why are you losing deals? Where are we vulnerable? Product, I just want they're normally there when they see like I want them in a discussion about, hey, vulnerabilities we have in the product are this, and this. And so sometimes you may look at acquisitions that just kind of build a defense layer around your retention. But the reason I need them all there is because when sales is saying, look, I don't have feature A, I'm losing deal after deal on feature A, product will say, I can build it, but normally that allows me to understand, is this an adjacency or a core? And if it's adjacency, I'll say, no, you can't, but how fast can you integrate so that we can throw that net out there? They need feature A. If they have it, we won't lose some of these deals. We'll win new deals, go after it. So I put a lot of weight in those conversations around the go-to-market team's opinion. But I also, normally my corp dev have been former investment bankers. They know how to look at an industry and how to grow enterprise value. So a lot of times they can start the ideation by saying, business intelligence seems to be important here. We don't have it. Here's how we're thinking about it. If sales tissue rejects the idea, you better listen. But if they get a little interested, then perk up. If they get excited, then move with pace. Because again, coin operated. They're doing it for one reason. They can get a bigger commission check.
Work. Yeah.
And if my commission plan is aligned to the company's benefit, everybody wins.
Yeah.
And that's why some of those things seem basic. A lot of companies, it's shocking how it's just not there. Like, how are you commissioning them? Does that matter to the company? Like, so they could be out there crushing it in sales and adding a fraction of the value to the company. And they're not doing anything wrong. They're literally going to game the system to maximize their commission check. So make sure that them gaming the system increases the value.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, amazing. Brilliant. Well, I guess as we're wrapping up here, I know that I'm trying to think in my mind, like, how do you continue to scale SAM, and this knowledge and perspective? And I know there's some board work you are doing or thinking about doing, maybe some teaching as well. Like, how do you think about just, again, you're locked in and you're with WP Engine, helping that company get to the next level. But as you think about your legacy and sort of how you spread and share more of this knowledge, how are you thinking about spending that time? Where do you think that's best served? And what is it that you want to share as a way to distill? Curious.
Part of it is like the mission I'm on now with WP Engine, that if we can execute to a strategic vision, it'll add to the panoramic of my career of something different. So I'm definitely keenly focused, like, how can we make this great? So different challenge. I think we know the answer. I'm pretty proud of where I think the answer is and what I think we can do. So it's to stay keenly focused on that. But in the meantime, what I've been amazed with, maybe I shouldn't be amazed, but what I have been amazed with, I have a real inquisitive want to be on boards. And look, I've worked with a lot of boards, and I've seen some talented people on there. And I've seen a lot of people that are working, if you want to say 4 days a week for a check, 4 days a year for a check would be generous. I want to be a part of the board because I want to be around people that are actually inquisitive about it, what I can get from them. And in like a pull dynamic, I can help if the operators want to help, like a pull, not a push. But I'm amazed about, I thought getting on a board would be a lot easier. So I'm actually a little surprised, like how, and it's not that I walk on water, but I think I could bring a lot. Like, I've been on boards and have known I could have replaced that entire board and given the sponsors more help with just one of me. because of what I'd seen and the mistakes I've made and learned from. So in my career, when I think about it, is I would love exposure to boards, and keenly like driven to win this WP engine thing. Like it's like win it or go out on the shield, but it's so winnable now. And I think we have a really amazing opportunity in front of us. Will be different from the other opportunities I've had. And then I would like to, I'm going to reach out to a couple of the universities because I went undergrad. I went grad school. I had, obviously some good professors, but I honestly think I can get in front of the classroom with them and really tell them what this software private equity really is. You really want to cut through all the bullshit, and I can replace semesters. Like I'll tell you exactly, this is what it is. This is what it means. Here's how you can really think about the valuation and get really intense about it. People always want to overcomplicate how you look at it. And I get back down to that algorithm and that recurring revenue and the start stop. And then if you can understand that as a student, you can come into the game. The other stuff's just, you'll learn it as you get there. So I have a real interest in if I can have opportunities to speak to some undergrads, would love some board opportunities, and across industries. Like I think my career, like I've been consumer goods, I've been industrial manufacturing, I've been industrial, I've been enterprise legal management, been Marcom, MarTech, been supply chain. I think I'm pretty versatile. I'm not going to say I'm the young Deion Sanders or Bo Jackson, the private equity, but I have an interest of things that interest me that I can lock into why you should be there, what you can do. But I think that's how I look at it is, where are the leadership opportunities and the really motivated teams I can be a part of? Where can I say or dispel anything that can help somebody that I would have loved to listen to somebody that has seen what I've seen back when I was like in school and like hear about what happens. And I don't ever remember hearing that. I got fundamentals and I got, the demand supply curve and the accounting rules and the finance rules, but nobody that ever really came in and just directly told me the good, the bad, and like what it's really going to be like. And I would have appreciated that. And it was just fortunately, as I got more inquisitive and drove harder at questions with some senior executives, I got answers from them. So I think that's kind of where I'd like to go. That I don't think this game's that complicated. And I think a lot of like, I have a bias and not to bore. I think a lot of like really talented people I've known go to Ivy League schools and they take classes on negotiations. And I think a lot of it's false precision. I'm a real big believer in direct transparency and cutting through the negotiation, taking 4 cycles, basically put it on the table, mean what you say what you mean. This is why I want to buy you or negotiate on this. This is the reason I do. This is what I'm willing to do, and not like go cycles. I think this private equity technology is similar. Like people want to make it mysterious and complicated. It's really not that. A lot of it gets down to, do you have the right athletes on the field? Are you driving a meritocracy culture? Because I have seen a lot of companies, they look on the surface, they feel good, but when you get into them, they're actually not that healthy. And the companies that are driven off of operational efficiency and meritocracy at the face may look a little like, oh, I don't know. And they're incredibly healthy because the people know why they're there and what they're doing. And, they're celebrated the right way. So I'm become a big believer in thou protest too much. When somebody says their culture is so good, I keep finding it's not that good. And the ones that never talk about it, a lot of times it's really good.
Yeah.
They're not talking about it because they're like, how do we get more widgets on the floor?
Yeah.
How are we like retaining more customers? They're just like
they're doing the work. Yeah.
Right. They're in the now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, look, we've been talking for almost 90 minutes now and our time's up in the studio, but I feel like we could go another 90. And if you're up for it at some point, we may have to do a second version because there's a lot more stories and probably learnings that we could dig into, I'm sure. But I just appreciate you carving out the time for this and sharing all that. That was amazing.
No, again, thank you for the invite. Yeah. I think this kind of stuff, at least it wakens me up. It makes me, refreshes me a little think about why do you have these opinions? Why do you have these ideas? And my disclaimer is, hey, there may be a lot of people that hear this and disagree, just one man's opinion.
Yeah. Well, I could see your passion even at the end when you talk about creating just a healthy, thriving organization. I could see that you're extremely passionate about that. So, and as someone who's been in those organizations on both sides of it, I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks again.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks. Join the Revenue Dilemma conversation. Hit subscribe, share, and like everywhere you listen. It's time we solve the revenue dilemma once and for all.